Irvin, man, I just gonna jump right into it, man. I'm tired of people quitting,
Yeah. So am I.
and so I figured you were a really great person to have this conversation with, man. So I thank you for coming back here
I
and sitting
yeah.
with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm not really sure if you're really happy because you've seen me quit a lot or
No,
like or
not at
not.
all. No, no, no. I'm sorry. I didn't
Uh,
mean it that way.
no, I'm just playing.
I
I'm messing.
I
Uh,
I meant because you're a very knowledgeable person
yeah.
and full of
Yeah.
wisdom.
I
And
was I appreciate that. I've been thinking about a scripture that came to my mind this morning,
okay,
and it's Second Thessalonians 3:13. And it basically there's an issue going on in the church in Thessalonica that had to be addressed, which was that people were being idle. They weren't really doing anything. They weren't doing anything bad, but they weren't doing anything good. They were
right,
just sort of stagnant. And if you go down to verse 13, it addresses that with the writer saying, do not grow weary in well doing.
yeah,
Because over time, your good deeds will produce something. It'll produce something good.
absolutely,
And what I see is that if I can be very honest, especially with this like Gen Z
yeah,
group and all of that, they get really, really, really attacked for this.
okay,
Okay, they get attacked a lot for it. Um, but I'm trying to go back to what are the issues, what causes people to quit.
yeah,
I in my life when I was younger, I did a lot of that. So I'd have a nice job, then I'd see a better job, better paying job, better benefits, all that kind of stuff, and then I would be like, I'm gonna go apply for that job. No, just quit this, and wouldn't give a 2 week notice. Wouldn't
hmm,
speak with my management.
yeah,
They possibly could have given me a raise if I would have done that. They possibly could have worked with me and given me better benefits, but I was too quick to see what was in front of
there,
me and all of that. Yeah, the carrot that was dangling.
It's a house divided, and I ain't talking about the rivalry. The numbers growing, people embracing reform theology. It's not a trend, just a product of consequence. Supposed to shepherd people, lead them to scripture, common sense. Look, it's pure buffoonery inside the church. Was made to be a haven for truth. Some sit down where liars lurk. No improvement in times are worse. I'm pointing to the sky, observe. According to Christ, it's a sign of birth. Look, how you believe in God and not what's written. Like certain chapters don't align with your vision.
And then I get into that other job and it was way worse.
yeah. I think people like
Like
to say they like to picture it as greener on the other side.
yeah, yeah, the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing. I think though with Gen Z it's a little different.
Okay,
With Gen Z, I always try to remind myself, my children are in that group.
hmm,
I try to remind myself that these are children that were born after 9/11.
yeah,
They've grown up in a society that's hyper vigilant on like terrorism and
hmm,
and they're very astute on global affairs.
okay,
Although there's a lot of conspiracies and a lot
man,
of crazy stuff they've grown up with.
absolutely.
They also had to endure COVID.
That was a tough one for them.
That was tough. My children were at that time they were preteens
Hmm,
during COVID, so imagine being a preteen and missing 2 years of school. Like you're having to do school from home,
yeah,
and you don't have interactions. There's no extracurriculars, none of that. You're basically stuck at home this whole time. Um, then they endured that, and then they come out of that. And in America, we're having a lot of what I would call a hyper spiritualism going on right now. There's sincere spiritual awakening and spiritual hunger, but then there's
yeah,
also on the flip side of that coin, like the whole prosperity gospel, the whole, you know what I mean? Uh, just sort of misaligned kind of theology that's just real off the wall. When I was in college, they talked about church, sex, and cults.
hmm,
And I think what we're dealing with. I'm sorry about that.
no,
What
you're
we're
good.
dealing with is a lot of we're dealing with a lot the mainstreaming of sex and cults.
Yeah,
And so there's just as many of those as there are you know, sort of the solid, fundamental, Christian doctrinal kind of things. So all of this is happening all at one time. You could see how their generation can get disillusioned,
yeah,
fall
absolutely. Oh
into
yeah,
despair, Um, they have a very high suicide rate,
Hmm.
unfortunately. Uh, they also seem, though, at the same time to yearn for connection
Yeah.
and yet not connect.
Yeah.
They just don't seem to land on that. They connect more with social media and online and things like that than they actually do with other people.
Right.
Even after, especially after COVID, it seems like just now I'm starting to notice their generation sort of starting to interact more with one another,
Hmm.
without it being having to be a structured kind of interaction. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so I have a lot of mercy and compassion for this generation, but at the same time, uh, we have to get to a point where we're not idle. If you think of a car, if a car goes idle, what happens? It's
Yeah,
just stuck in
just
one
stuck in one
place.
spot.
Yeah, it's turning the engines on, but the wheels aren't moving, it's just stuck in one spot.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's what's going on with people who are just quitting everything. They they're not moving forward. And why? So I thought about this for a while, and then I thought, well, what's their goal? We
Yeah.
call it purpose.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I want to call it purpose. What's their
Yeah.
purpose?
What are they looking forward to? What are they working towards? What
Mm.
what is their purpose? And I think that's a big part of the equation. The other part of it is what motivates them to accomplish that purpose.
You know, I kind of want to back up
Sure.
just a bit, but I
Sure.
also want to throw something in there. And it's like, people don't realize, like, all right, I'm gonna tie these two together. What I want to
Sure.
say, and Irvin, I chose you because when you told me your story, your testimony, bro, I have met a lot of people,
Mhm.
right? Um, but you're stuck out. I haven't met somebody that has been in a spot where you have been, as far as experiencing a full body paralysis
Mhm.
due to I'm gonna say maybe due to the COVID shot.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um, things going blind,
Mhm.
having the perseverance to even stay at work and learning how to color code them. You've seen colors,
Mhm.
so you were learning how to work the machine to,
Based on the colors.
based on the colors because you
Yeah.
couldn't see.
Yeah.
Anybody at that point be like, you know what, I quit. I'm done. I'm tired of this crap. I give up. You know.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing that people don't realize is like, okay, give up. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're not dead.
Yeah.
We got to keep going until we're dead.
And the scriptures are very clear. Like for me, what founded me was what the reason I kept going was, first of all, because I have a faith in the Lord, and I quite honestly believe it's the Lord who carried me through. So I knew that God was going to get me through. He said He would never leave me, He would never forsake me. He'd be with me always until the very end of the age. And so I know that the Lord would never give up on me.
Yeah.
That's what kept me going. So I'm
Mhm.
like, if the Lord's not going to give up on me, I can't give up on me. And I definitely am not going to take for granted the Lord's commitment to me.
Mhm.
So if He says I can do this, if He says I can get through anything with Him, um, then I can get through anything with Him. Now, was it easy? No.
All right. I believe that.
Did I have doubts? Man, I was like Thomas, man, on roids. Like I doubted all the time about everything. Did I fail at times? Absolutely. But did I quit? No. No. There's this word that is not I don't hear very often, but it's called resilience.
Man, love that word.
Like resilience is enduring
Mhm.
no matter what.
Yeah.
You're just gonna get through it.
Sometimes, and you're right. You're absolutely right. And I don't think that, you know, the enemy doesn't always have to come to destroy things,
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's what we always say, right? He comes to destroy, kill. Yeah, I get it. But sometimes he's just got to wear you out enough for you to make you quit.
Yeah. The enemy only has like three tools. It's lying, deceiving, distracting.
That's it.
You know, um, if you read in scripture, the Bible says that the enemy could not put anything on Job without asking the Lord first.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he would even go to the Lord and say, have you seen your servant Job? And God was like, you could do anything to Job, but you can't take his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can guarantee you Job will still serve me.
Yeah.
Because Job
Man.
and the Lord were tight like that. And I feel that the Lord's like that with anyone who calls on him,
Absolutely.
anyone who reaches out to God. My thing with quitting, though, is that there are some things that let's be honest, there are some things that we probably should quit.
Oh,
Things
yeah.
that damage our lives, things
Absolutely.
that are hazardous, toxic, sinful,
Yeah.
that destroy our relationship with God and with those we love. But then there's some things that you definitely don't want to quit because starting over costs you, and it costs you a lot.
It does.
So there are some things I have quit in my life that were good things. Man, do I regret it.
Yeah.
Man, do I have a remorse about it. Because to this day, I'm still paying the price for that. Now,
what do you think makes us do that? Because, the Bible says endurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to say that distraction will kill endurance fastest.
Yeah, I think what causes that, Alex, is that it is innate in every human being to not want to suffer or endure pain, endure hardship. In fact, like in our societies, we live as if we're not going to die. And last time I checked, every human being has died.
Absolutely, every day
You know what
we
I'm
get
saying?
closer to it.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that there were a few that resurrected.
Yeah.
But they had to die before they resurrected. You know what I'm saying? So every human being has to die. We live in a society that's set up to try to prolong life without having to suffer.
Man.
So like even surgeries 100 years ago were not surgeries today.
Yeah.
Why? Because doctors have some compassion, some empathy. They don't want someone suffering while they're doing a surgery to try to save their life.
Yeah.
But we innately don't want to suffer. We enjoy pleasure. We don't enjoy pain. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I keep moving here. One of the things that I've learned too in life is that when you begin to, let's say weightlifters, wrestlers, people who are in sports, gymnasts, and so forth, they understand that when you begin to do something that's difficult and challenging, especially for the body, you're going to have to endure some pain.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go through some suffering. But that pain and that suffering is going to produce a positive result. For instance, I started lifting weights a few months ago. You think you're going to lift weights and in 2 weeks you're going to have this awesome bod, all this kind of stuff. And that's not how it works.
Right.
I also thought that by lifting a lot of heavy weight, that I would get big muscles. And that's not the case either.
Right.
I had to learn how to pinpoint certain muscles and use a certain amount of weight and cause that muscle to rip.
Yeah.
By repetition.
Yeah.
Repetitiously using those weights. And it caused soreness and pain the following day. Same thing with running. I used to run in high school. I was a runner. I loved half marathons and things like that, 5Ks, all that. And when you're running long distance, your body starts to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
And endurance and resilience is about getting through that pain in your mind, in your head.
Yes.
And just chugging through it. And you get like the second wind after that, and you start, and by the time you're done, you're sore, you're tired. But the fact that you could actually finish what you had set out to start is overwhelming. It does something to you neurologically, psychologically, spiritually.
Gets your endorphins going.
Yeah, it gets you going.
Yeah.
Okay. People quit because, and I think a lot of us quit at that very moment when the pain starts setting in, and whatever that pain may be. Unfortunately, some people think that some good things in life are painful. Like we have a society, unfortunately, that thinks that manual labor is somehow, because it's manual and it's laborious, that it should be quit.
Here's a quick break from our sponsors, R&R Handyman Service. From small repairs to home improvements, no job is too small. If you need reliable, honest work done right the first time, call R&R Handyman Service at 419-770-0242. That's 419-770-0242. R&R Handyman Service, getting it done right for you. Yeah, mind over matter, man,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then the other thing too, and the most important for me, is that if you renew your mind daily in the Word of God, if you
Come on.
strengthen yourself from God's perspective and you start doing what God says, I can guarantee you're not going to be so quick to quit,
Yeah.
because you know that on the other side, the reward is much greater
Yes.
than enduring the endurance of the pain or the suffering or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you're right, and I feel like a lot of people. All right, I'm gonna bring it down to this sense.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to get rich.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But barely do you ever just walk up and find riches
Mm-hmm.
to make you wealthy. You're not gonna walk up and lift up a rock and
Mm-hmm.
rich. Thank God. I mean, it happens sometimes, right? You might hit the lottery, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's only for a second. Especially if we all know you hit the lottery. Unless you're making investments and you're wise with your money, that lottery money is gonna be gone.
Oh yeah.
Quick.
Yeah.
So you don't really just walk up and find riches.
No.
So you got to work for them.
Yep.
And that's one thing I believe we are held to that. That's what God holds us to, is you're going to have to work for it.
That brings me back to the whole aspect of like purpose, because if you're going to work towards something, you want to also build motivation for yourself so that you don't quit, so that
Well-
you stay in the game. And
I feel that, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I want to stop you there for a second, because motivation is good, but eventually it burns out.
yeah, and this is what I was leading to. The motivation helps you with habits, and then it's those habits and those disciplines that
There
carry
you
you
go.
through.
Yes.
Okay. So like you do at first, you do want to be motivated. That's why, when there's a sports activity or something that's coming up, or they're recruiting for the football team, whatever, there's all these different little activities that are going on. Why are they doing that? Well, because they're wanting to get you
The
in.
hype.
They want you in.
Yeah.
Okay. But once let's say you have once you purposed in yourself that you're going to go ahead and you're going to be part of the football team, you also have to understand that there's going to be some disciplines that you're going to have to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and some skill sets you're going to have to learn in order to be an effective, whatever your position may be, for the team.
Yeah.
And you want to do that because ultimately there's a greater goal, the game,
Right.
and hopefully winning the game.
Right.
Okay. So I still believe in short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, and sometimes it's difficult to think of it that way, but here's a practical application of building habits that stick with you, that help you to not to quit. When I moved in, I was raised by an aunt and uncle.
Mhm.
And when I moved in with them, my uncle was a Vietnam veteran, and he was very well molded by the military. So his whole life after that was very reflective
Yeah.
of his experience in the military. Anybody who's in the military knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so he was very organized, very meticulous. The first thing he taught me when I moved in with him was not, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. There's very simple things he asked of me. Make your bed every morning before you leave your room.
Absolutely.
Make sure that you have your room organized.
Mm-hmm.
Help out with chores around the home, mowing the lawn, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It wasn't, and those were, I knew those were daily and weekly and monthly activities that I had to do
Sure.
my whole experience living there, and it became part of who I was. But those small habits I was then able to build on. I was
Mm.
able to build on those small habits because I knew when I would go for a job, for instance, in high school, and they would ask me, well, what kind of skills do you have? This is your first job. I'm like, well, I'm good at organizational skills.
Yeah.
I'm good at being on time. I'm good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I knew I woke up at a certain time. I knew I went to bed at a certain time. I'm well disciplined.
Yes.
I'm mature enough because I also have self-control. There are things that I know that were pleasing in my home and things that were not pleasing. So I learned how to have some self-control and some self-discipline.
Yeah.
Now, why am I saying this about people quitting? I learned when I was raising my children that when they were younger, they would quit things.
Mm-hmm.
They'd quit sports, they quit activities. My daughter quit cheerleading and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering, why are my kids doing this? And then I began to realize, you know what? I'm going to have a list of things, small little things that I want my kids to do every day. It's
Yeah.
going to be rewarded at the end of the week,
Mm-hmm.
but I need them to understand that those habits are healthy habits and they're worth rewarding, and it's something for them to look forward to. Small goals,
Yeah,
small
absolutely.
little short-term goals. Then as I got older, they were already in the habit of doing certain things.
Getting a routine of it.
Yeah. Once you put yourself in a routine and you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't need all that motivation anymore.
Right.
It becomes part of who you are.
Yes.
It's just who you are. When you start teaching your children to start something and to finish it, to follow through and to finish it. For instance, little kids, this is a real practical thing, but little kids like to play at the preschool and all that, and they'll take the toys out of the cubbies. Well, what was the song they would sing when they teach the kids to put the toys back into the cubbies? Clean up, clean up.
Yeah.
Everybody help. Clean up, put it on the shelf,
Yeah.
And Caillou would sing it. Arthur would sing it, everybody sang along with clean up, and that got them into the habit of what? Of knowing that there's a time to play, a time to use things, and also a time to clean it up and to put it back.
Yeah.
See, start, middle, finish.
Yes.
As we get older, it's easy to want to skip out on some of those things because I know, that teenage time period where like, I know, you tell your teenage kid, hey, I need you to finish the dishes. I know, I'll get to it. And you're like, no, you started it, you finish it.
Yeah.
Consistency is also a huge key in this. A lot of young people, I'll be honest, and especially in this generation, they had parents from my generation. And parents from my generation, both of them were working.
Yeah.
Both of them out of the house. Then, of course, they want their own life.
Mm-hmm.
They're always talking, my generation is sort of selfish. They're always talking about like, my vacation. Well, what about my car and my house and you have a mixed families, multi-generational families, whatever. My generation's always like that, always thinking about sort of self, a little greedy. And then our children are sort of there. And if we don't teach our children, not the school, not the coach, they should be reinforcing what we're teaching.
Yes.
But we need to teach within our homes consistency. That's going to help raise a generation that doesn't quit on everything, that learns to be resilient, that learns to endure things. Now, my mother used to tell me, what you're unwilling to learn at home, the world will teach you very quickly.
Oh, man. That's a bad place to learn.
Yeah. So she's like, so you don't want the street teaching your kids, how to be responsible.
I heard something this week that made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And a really good friend of mine was like, my dad used to tell me, you're going to listen to three people in life. You're going to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to listen to the streets when they take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to listen to the law.
Yep.
But one of the three, you're going to listen to.
Yep.
And I thought, man, that's so true.
The other part too about this whole conversation about quitting and stuff and the development of people who don't quit is I mentioned self-discipline, but also discipline.
Oh yeah.
In general,
is a big one.
In general, like my parents were not afraid to discipline me. Now, I don't believe in abuse.
Yeah.
Because I've gone through abuse and stuff. But when I say my parents, I'm talking about my aunt and uncle who raised me. They had disciplinary measures in our home. And it wasn't always, it wasn't physical because I was with them when I was a preteen, teenager, stuff like that. So like, it wasn't like physical discipline. Although I'm not against, a parent spanking their child or something like that. But I don't think that's always the right form of discipline.
Yeah.
The discipline that I got was if I didn't finish a project, I had to go back and finish it.
There was something they don't do,
Yeah.
And when I first started out as a young man and working, if you did something wrong, nobody was going back to do the work over.
Yeah.
They're going to send you.
Yes.
And you're going to do it right.
Yep.
And then you can come back. And that's something these kids, like, they don't know. Like, okay, if it's wrong, like, well, I'll come help you and do it. No, like, you're going to go back and you're going to do it your own. And you're going to do it until you get it right.
And you get an opportunity, whether people realize it or not, you learn a lot through your failures. So
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
if you made a pizza wrong, for instance, at the pizza shop, and they're like, go back and make that right, and chuck the one you got away and go make it right again. Um, a young person can actually learn from that what they did wrong and what not to do,
Yeah.
and then they can learn what is acceptable and what they can do. I think this generation too fears messing up.
Yes.
There's this part of them that's like, I don't want to mess it up, so I'm not even gonna try. I'll just sit idle.
They get scared. They get the
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to say on the discipline part is, the Bible speaks on,
Mhm.
you lack the rod and rebuke,
Mhm.
and the child's going to bring shame to its mother,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
and that's so true.
I learned all of my best dance moves from my mom's belt.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying, like you said, I'm not saying abuse, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's even this point to where, hey, like, even God corrects us,
Yeah.
even, let's look at Jonah. All right.
Mhm.
Um, he didn't, I like to say God can open doors, but we have to walk through them.
Yeah.
Jonah didn't walk through the door and get on the boat he was supposed to go to
Yeah.
Nineveh on, right? He didn't walk through that door of the vessel. So he got onto another door. Well, what did they do? They threw him off the ship.
Yeah.
As much as that seems like you threw him off the ship in the ocean, that was correction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that was correction.
Yeah.
Now, did he die? No. He gets swallowed up in a whale. And now think of that correction.
Mhm.
You how miserable that must have been. But it ain't no different than what we get ourselves into when we're not obedient.
Well, what's that? The scripture, I think it's 1 Timothy 4:16 or 3:16. It says that the scriptures were divinely inspired by God for reproof, rebuke, correction, instruction in righteousness.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we're talking about discipline and stuff, but sometimes we can discipline our children before explaining to them what is necessary, what's expected.
Mm.
If
Communication is a big thing that's
yeah,
lost.
yeah, we don't want to create quitters either.
Yeah.
Because there's the other scripture that says, parents, don't irritate your children to the point of frustration. Don't there's a word called exasperate. Don't exasperate your children. Don't irritate them to the point of. And we have a generation, I think, that either the parents weren't involved, or sometimes we as parents, we can assume that our kids know what we expect of them without telling them.
Yes.
And they don't know.
Yeah.
Some kids need it. Most of us need it spelled out. I know I still need it spelled out, and I'm 48 years old. You know what I'm saying? So like sometimes I need expectations spelled out for me, so I do know what's expected of me, and I sort of have that purpose while I'm there. Sorry, I keep hitting
No,
this.
you're good.
But yeah, I'm like slamming it. Yeah, like microphone. No. But still, it's just we all the time. I knew I would get frustrated when I was a young kid because it was sort of like that at home with my biological parents. My mom and my dad, they were sweet people and everything. But my mom, she grew up in a generation where you stayed quiet, you watch what everybody else is doing. That's what you do. And if you don't do that, you didn't learn your expectations. You didn't learn your purpose, sort of. And so she sort of passed that down to us.
I like that though.
Where it was like, be quiet, just watch what we do, repeat what we do, and now you know what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, there's so much facts to that. And one I like to say, the 3 L's.
Mm-hmm.
You look, you listen, you can learn.
Yep.
Right. And the other thing, I say it all the time. I say it in almost every episode. And I'm sure viewers are probably tired of me saying it, and you guys might even know what I'm going to say. But 75% of learned behavior comes from how we lead our lives.
Yes.
And we forget about that. And we all get so busy, man. Work gets us so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And the phones, these phones, as much as I use mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to show, like this weekend, finally, it's been the first time in a while, but I was able to do enough work to generate enough work to where I was like, all right, I scheduled everything and I was able to take the weekend off. First time in, I don't know how many months, weeks, whatever. It's been a hot minute. in about
Oh,
6
wow.
months, my wife said, like, I've been able to take a weekend off and like shut my phone off. And I still got on my phone. Like, right. I had downtime when I wasn't around anybody, and I still went and picked up my phone, and I'd go check, my social medias or whatever. But it felt good. It felt good. And that's what we need to do.
Mhm.
We gotta just shut the phones off, man, and spend more time back with the family.
This is another thing I think about too. Like, we've, as a society, a majority of people in this country, and for that matter, most countries now, live in big cities.
Yeah.
They don't live in the rural communities like it used to be.
Yeah.
And in the rural, and I don't want to like, you know, fantasize about the past either. But in the same respect, there are some things in the past that were good. Um, and that is that if you lived on a farm or you lived on a homestead or, you lived in a rural community, there was always an obligation there were responsibilities that had to be taken care of.
Yeah.
There was, if you didn't do it, it affected everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this generation, as much as they're yearning for connection, the reason they're so disconnected is because they don't know their place in their community. And so it's easy to quit all these things that people ask them to do because it's not necessarily a place, something they can identify with. It's just a chore. It's just something that they do one time and then they take off. So then that mentality builds up in their life. That if you're doing that consistently, where you're hopping consistently from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, eventually your worldview of life is it's okay to just quit that and hop and move on to something else.
Man.
It's sort of like what we were talking about in the previous podcast, where it's easy just to give up on other people. It's easy just to quit them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this relationship, so you know what? They're not doing everything the way I want them to, so I'm just going to quit. And then we wonder why we have generations of high rates of divorce, because we're just quitting things.
Well, I wonder, does that start back in the house with the lack of communication, a lack of like now, right? Because now, like we've said, you can go to a dinner table and there's no engagement from the family at the dinner table. Even if you're out to eat, right? You got everybody on their phones, you got everybody on electronics, and there's no communication.
There's homes, Alex. I've been in homes and been invited in homes throughout the years, and there is no dinner table.
Isn't that crazy?
There's
Isn't
no
that
dinner
crazy?
table. Yeah.
No,
like
no,
they're all
look at-
eating in front of the TV or
Now look at this part, like
something.
no,
Yeah.
I feel that, and then the other thing we talked about is like not talking about our feelings.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then now, I mean, it goes back to communication either way, right? But still, these things need to be communicated.
Mhm.
Because where's the child at? Well, and then what's going to happen? He's going to go repeat the same cycle he learned,
Mhm.
and that was just sitting in front of the TV eating dinner.
And there's that whole attachment to it too. You attach your feelings to things you like, and you attach your feelings to things you don't like. So, like, especially with children, they do this. And this is why I teach my children: you don't base decisions in your life off of how you feel. You base it off of what you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, because you can. My son hated washing dishes. Okay, I had 2 dishwashers at home. My son, my daughter, and those machines would break down every once in a while.
Yeah.
And they needed repaired quite often. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And they were new models, so I was getting upset because I'm like, these are new models; they should be working right. And when I put those 2 together to work together, it was horrible. What should have taken 5 minutes to get done took like an hour and a half.
No teamwork.
Yeah, and then the dishes were dirty still. Like I'd go to check them, and they're just slimy and half a
Like, I had
chunk
to put
of
2 pots in
chicken.
here.
Yeah, and like I'm like, you only had 4 forks and 2 plates. Like how did it take an hour and a half and they're still dirty? Like, the thing is that they would attach emotion to that. To that chore. So whenever I would tell my son, okay, today is your responsibility. It's time for you to do dishes. Today. Can I skip out today? I promise. I'll clean the toilets. I just don't want to do the dishes, and he hated the toilet just as much as he did the dishes and,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And I would tell him, listen, this isn't based on your feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't make this decision based on your feelings, and you're not going to skip out on this because of your feelings.
Yeah.
You're going to do this because it needs done.
That's good.
Okay, so and that's something that is a trait that has to be taught. That's something that you have to teach your children, that they cannot make decisions based on their feelings. Now, I would tell my son this too as well. I would say, no, go get it done, and you can grumble and be mad while you're doing it, but you're gonna get it done because you're not gonna let your feelings stop you from doing what you got to do. So you may have a feeling about it, and you may even attach your feeling to it, but you're still gonna get the job done.
Yeah.
You know?
I like to say excuses, and it takes me to excuses, right?
Yeah,
Excuses are expensive and they cost a lot.
so much.
At the time they seem cheap to make, right?
Yeah.
But you and I both know how fast life can go.
Yeah.
And so by the time when you get older, you come to this hard spot, and I just want to quit, and I think we've allowed kids to make so many excuses, right? And them excuses now cost us everything. But also, not only excuses, we've allowed ourselves to make so many excuses that we cannot lead by example.
Yeah.
And they used to tell us it all the time, hey, lead by example in school. Lead by example. Well,
Mhm.
like as a kid, we don't get it. Right? We don't get, okay, well, why the heck do I get to lead by example? Well, because there's a fourth grader, a third grader that's watching you,
Yeah.
dork.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell myself, like, because there's somebody watching you.
Mhm.
That's what I tell my kids, because there's somebody, you're 17, you're 18, you're 20. Regardless if you like it or not, you're a leader, bro.
Yes.
And veterans, for veterans, it drives us crazy, transitioning out.
Mm.
And one of two things happens, but you can't separate them. It's hard to separate them, right? So veterans, they go through trauma. Okay.
Mhm.
So when they go through trauma, their window of tolerance shortens.
Mhm.
Now we don't want to put up with the crap,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But two, we're so used to living in structure and discipline. You make it out the civilian world again, and it's been a few years, and you forget what it's like not to have discipline and not to have structure and not to have routine.
Mhm.
And it makes you feel uncomfortable because nobody around you has it. And you're
Mhm.
like, what is wrong with this place? And I was telling my oldest son yesterday, I was like, thank God we have cops. Thank God we have laws, because if we didn't have any laws or cops, bro, civilians have no discipline.
Mhm.
This place would be the Wild West.
Mhm.
There would be shops robbed. There would be houses robbed, cars stolen every day because people make excuses because they're lazy,
Mhm.
don't want to get up because they feel work is hard because they haven't set a routine or because mom and dad hasn't been hard enough on them. And now you're 35 years old, still living in your mom's basement. Get up, bro. And I'm sorry
Like,
if I stepped on toes.
No,
I don't
no, but
care,
that's
bro.
like mindset is what needs developed. You know what I mean? A mindset
Yes.
of that everyone is born into this earth naked, and you will leave this earth for the most part naked. Okay, and you don't get to take anything with you, but what you do on this earth can change the world.
Man, come on.
Okay. So I heard Billy Graham say one time, he said, my parents used to take me out to the woodshed. And he goes, he says, I wish that they would have done that more often. He goes, because maybe I'd be a better man. This is Billy Graham.
Wow.
Saying, I wish my parents would have disciplined me more so I could have been a better man. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I also think too, like when you're talking about the cost, the cost of excuses. I think sometimes we forget that excuses also has a best friend, and it's lies.
Man.
Because once you start making excuses, you start lying, and it is very difficult when you start making excuses and start lying to keep up with all the lies and excuses that you make.
It is.
That's the first thing that hits you is you can't keep up with all that.
You're so true. You're so true because the army would always say there's no such thing as an excuse.
Yeah.
It's either important enough for you to address it, or it's not.
Yes.
And that goes the same with this thing right here.
Yep.
This is either important enough for you to grab it and put your face in it, or it's not.
And we also live in a time too where it's easy to be deceived.
I was just thinking about it.
And thinking that it's not going to affect my life or it's not going to affect other people.
Man.
And it affects everyone.
It does,
It does.
and I was studying on that on Matthew on deceiving, you
Mhm.
know, and not everybody's gonna come, you know, not everybody's gonna come. People might come in His name,
Mhm.
right? People may come in His name,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean it's spiritually led.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's rooted,
Right.
and it doesn't mean it's for you.
Yeah.
And people, a lot of people in our culture lack discernment because they make an excuse to be so busy. Their life is so busy.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we just got done talking to Jason, bro. I
Yeah.
love that man. That man is
Yeah.
up at like 4 o'clock in the morning with his face in his word.
Yep.
You know, there's no excuses.
Yeah.
You have time. You sleep 8 hours. You know how many people are like, I gotta get 7 hours of sleep. I gotta get 8 hours of sleep. How much time do you waste sleeping?
Mhm.
Add that up times a week. You waste a majority of you waste the majority of your life sleeping and not doing work.
Yeah.
The United States Army and the infantry does more work than the whole world by 7 a.m.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
And what people here in America are like, oh, I just need 15 minutes to get ready. Cochino, you didn't even brush your teeth. You went to work with your teeth yellow.
Yes. Yeah.
You're disgusting, bro. And I'm getting mad at this episode, right? I'm getting real and raw because I'm sick of it, bro.
Yes.
I'm sick of you guys. I'm sorry. I'm sick of our country being lazy.
Yeah.
I'm sick of our kids going to school and learning garbage, and then they're coming home and what?
Yes.
Sit in front of the TV and complain because they have 5 pages of homework to do. You didn't even do 5 pages of homework. Get it done at work or at school. You got to study. How? What was you doing? Slinging spitballs across the room?
Yeah.
Like on their phones. Yeah. Like, you know, I'm just,
And while there are kids in third world countries who have 2 books in their
Come on,
library
man.
and they have them memorized.
memorized,
You
bro.
know what I'm saying? And them
Wishing
kids,
they could be
yes,
in America.
Yes.
Like, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Like, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to my viewers. I'm not trying to get like, I don't want to push anybody away, but if I'm stomping on toes, man, hey, that means you got to wake up.
Yeah.
You know, our country, bro.
There's and people quit because they don't believe that there's something to live for. And they don't believe there's something to strive for. Listen, I can give you a list. Give me a call. I'll give you a list.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that we need done in this country and in my local community, all over this world, that need to be done, that need to
Yeah,
be accomplished,
absolutely.
that need to be finished. You know, there are people who have started schools, have started ministries, have started, hospitals and so forth. Imagine if they quit halfway through.
You know what? I was reading that. I was studying on that. What would happen? Like, all right, so you know, people don't like people that doesn't study the word, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm praying, but the Lord's not answering. Okay, well, let's go to James, right?
Let's go to the word.
Let's go to the word.
Yeah.
You prayed about it, but was he double-minded on it?
Yeah.
Did you pray about it and then you seen something that the enemy distracted you and you got distracted and started cursing what you just prayed?
Yeah.
You know, are
So
you
true.
being double-minded?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean that God doesn't want to bless you what you're asking for right now. It just means your heart's not ready for it. Your heart posture is not in the right place for it. So people quit.
Yeah.
They quit on God. But he knows. He's like, man, if I give this to you right now, your dumb ego and your pride is going to go and it's going to ruin the relationships you have instead of furthering relationships for me.
Yeah. I mean, going into the word, we wouldn't have these scriptures if there are people who quit. See,
Man.
Tyndale wanted everyone to be able to read the Bible in their own language.
Mm-hmm.
So he went throughout Europe and they started using the printing press and they started translating the Bible into almost every language that they possibly could.
Wow.
They would hide it in sacks of flour and wheat
No
and
way.
get it into other countries. He got caught doing this. And he was burned at the stake, I believe.
And
for
what
doing this.
are you doing for your faith?
Yeah. Like there's so many things. Like imagine if Paul quit halfway through his missionary trips. We would not be sitting here.
Let me take that even
You know what I'm saying?
further.
Yeah.
What if Paul quit and he didn't get the letter of the Corinth out?
Right.
He was chained to a Roman guard
Yes.
on house arrest. If
Yes.
he quit, he did that while he was in prison
Yes.
and house arrest. He still did that.
They were literally boiled in oil. They were boiled in oil. They were crucified upside down. They were beaten in cities by mobs. Imagine if they would have just quit and said, I can't do it anymore. I quit. God, you understand. I quit.
Man.
No, and it's about priorities as well. This is what I want to encourage someone who does quit, and they're sitting here and they're listening to this and they're watching us and they're like, man, I've been quitting on everything all my life. Man, I don't want you to feel condemned either. I don't want you to feel like you cannot get up and accomplish something. I want to encourage you to do one simple thing every day consistently for the next week or two. Make your bed.
Yeah, if you can't,
If you can't do anything else, make your bed. If you can get up and you can pray, you have the time to pray, and you have the time to pray. Turn off All in the Family. Turn off the TV show or whatever, and pray. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Give some time to God. Especially if you're a parent, prioritize your kids.
Yeah.
Like, I go to stores and malls and places all over, kids galore everywhere. Now, I'm not saying all parents are irresponsible or anything like that. But what I am saying is that the behavior of some of the children, it's astounding. The behavior of some kids, just the gall of some kids. If I looked at my mom cross-eyed,
she would knock it straight.
Yeah, I'd have a new dance move, Like, it's just, I wouldn't dare, even now, I don't dare talk to people who are older than me with an attitude, even if they're wrong. Even if their treatment is bad of me.
Let me stop you right there. Let's get on that subject. Let me get on that subject. You know what? This is another thing, men. You got married. Why? Right? Why do you feel it's the need to cuss out, dog out your wife? Do you really love her? Because should you talk that way to her? Wives, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Because I know it goes both ways, right? Do you really love that person? Is that going to make them love you more? No. And going back to the bed thing, if you can't have your bed in order when you first wake up, what's your mind look like?
Mm-hmm.
If your own room, what does your kids' room look like? How many times you tell them to clean your room? Well, what does your room look like? You keep it clean? Because they're looking at your room and the first excuse is going to be,
you show me someone's room or you show me their home. If I go into someone's home and it's all disheveled and disorganized, most likely their thoughts are as well.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying all the time, but most likely it is like that, because there are some geniuses that had the great thoughts and they were messy.
Absolutely.
So, but I don't want people to feel beat up by this. If you have been in the habit of quitting, because I was in the habit of quitting too, and I had to learn that I had to stick things out for my sake. If for anything or anyone else, especially if you have family, like I was saying earlier, if you have family, prioritize your children, prioritize your spouse.
Yeah.
The greatest, I hear a lot of ministers and ministries that will tell me, their family's falling apart. 60-something% of pastors are remarried. And now I'm not saying that to condemn the pastors, because we don't know their situation and stuff, but just think about that for a second. Something happened in the marriage that the marriage fell apart. 60-something%. And I think it's like 30-something% of those pastors are remarried twice over. So like the greatest ministry in your life is not your pulpit.
Yeah.
It's your spouse and your children.
Yes.
And so I want to speak to Christian believers that, we have to make a priority of our families. We have to make a priority of communicating with our families, of giving expectations to our children to meet.
Oh man, big ones.
They need to have goals and expectations they need to meet.
Also on that, man, teach your kids that little wins.
Yes.
Little wins matter, man.
They're
little
the
wins
biggest part.
stack up to a big win, bro.
Yes.
And a lot of us forget that, you know what? It's a win just to wake up.
Yes.
It's a win because you know what? I wasn't promised, but I was granted.
And if you're able to sit down with your family when you eat.
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing we do.
Put your phones away. Get away from the living room. Get away from distractions. Sit down with your family, even if for 15, 20 minutes, a quick lunch or something together. Yeah. But sit down, talk to each other. Connect, because you also get strength to endure your daily struggle or your daily battle or your whatever it may be, your challenges, from the people that love you.
You know, that's so true. And one thing that I want to start doing, and I want to recommend other people to do is like find now that it's getting nicer, right? We're coming back in the spring and summer, wintertime up north is a little hard to do this, but find find something that gives you um a little bit of a task, right?
Hmm.
And knock it out as a family.
Yeah.
That's what do you think we do in the army?
Yeah.
Why do you think they're making us carry around telephone poles?
Yeah.
To look stupid? No, it's to teach us all that we all have to lift at the same time to make this thing go up.
Yes.
If one person's not doing their job, the log's not going to go up.
Yeah.
If they're making us hold it to sit up and two people aren't sitting up, that log is not going up. Everybody has to work together.
Yes.
It takes the whole team, man.
Yes.
And that's one thing we don't do. We don't do any family building anymore.
Hmm.
Everybody's so busy working, so many excuses. They got this to do, that to do.
Well, that's the question I ask too, is if you notice your children or you yourself, or maybe your children that notice that your parents or people around you are always quitting, I would say the same thing. Try to find something you guys can do together that you can accomplish together.
Accomplish together, yes.
Because the goal is in the bonding through the accomplishment of finishing something, finishing it through, seeing it through.
Dude, go home and everybody bring their chones downstairs, your dirty canzones, and throw them in the washer, your dirty underwear and pants. Go throw them in the washer, and then everybody sit down and separate them and fold them together. You know what I mean? It's an easy task y'all can do. Go grab everybody's laundry, mix it together. What do you think we do when we get off the birds? We know when they take us to another country.
Yeah.
They're not separating our bags. They want us hurried up and off the flight.
You know, my daughter and my son were taught to cook by the time they were 7, 8 years old. So I was not scared of leaving my children to make dinner for the family. A lot of times we just did it together.
Yeah.
Because we got to talk.
Right.
We got to catch up. I learned a lot about what was going on in my children's life during that time. I learned about the things that they did want to quit on. And I was able to encourage them on how to attack certain situations in their lives so that they didn't have to quit.
Yeah.
They could have some kind of like victory run afterwards.
You know, in that, that's so good because, you know, with kids, right? Kids like to be like, oh, I didn't, you know, if they mess up on an ingredient or something, I didn't like that, right? But the one thing in there that now I said a lot of things that could have stepped on toes, and that wasn't my point. I just want to be honest with you guys, right? Sure. I don't want to offend you guys, but sometimes I think I even need to be offended sometimes. You know, sometimes if I'm out of place, put me in my place, right? Yeah. But the other thing, man, is that opinions, okay? Opinions that are not, all right, there's a difference between constructive criticism and an opinion, okay? Yeah. Constructive criticism is going to come from my wife. It's going to come from you, my friends, right? My brothers. Now, opinions are going to come from people that do not agree with this platform, people that don't agree with me, right? Mm-hmm. That's none of my business. I don't care, bro. It's none of my business. What is my business is my purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's another big thing that causes people to quit is people's opinions, the way people view them. I don't care. If I have a booger in my nose, just tell me and get it off, right? So I don't of course I don't want to look stupid, right. But fix me.
Yeah, be a good friend.
Right, be a good friend. That's constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Right? Now telling me I don't like your show because you talk about God, that's an opinion and I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like, then go on. Yeah. That's not, your opinion is not my business. You know, what is my opinion is my purpose. My purpose is my family and this ministry.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And, you know, like even in this conversation we're having right now, like I can sense you're venting a little bit as well. You know what I mean? And
I am. I want to, but
it's good. It's good though, because that was another thing I was going to just point out is that like sometimes venting, arguing, debating, having conversation clarifies things. It lets you know the cards that are on the table, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, hey, the reason we're having this conversation today is because these are the cards that are on our table.
Real conversations, man.
It's a real conversation about why are so many people quitting. Well, we're bringing up all of these different, you know, all these different issues and all these different reasons as to why people are quitting. But I also want to give people who are listening the understanding that you don't have to quit.
You don't have to quit.
Quitting is a choice.
It's all in the mind.
And it's a decision that you make. And most of the time when you quit, you're making that decision based on how you feel, not on what you know. Most of the time we have that gut feeling that if I just stick this out, man, it will be so much worth it. The reward, the other side of this is going to be so
Yes.
much more worth it. It's sort of like investing. I've been reading books on investing and the psychology of money and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things they talk about is compounding interest and exponential compounding.
I was talking
Okay.
about
And so compounding interest is sort of horizontal. It's like 8 plus 8 plus 8. So you invest $8 for the next 9 months, you're going to have $72.
Mhm.
Okay. Exponential growth is 8 times 8 times 8. So multiplying by 8 for the next 9 months, and you have over 300 and something million,
that. Yeah.
whatever it may be. Okay. So we sometimes forget that right when we're about to quit something is when we actually are going to hit that exponential point.
Mm.
You know, we think that we've been adding the whole time, when in reality, when you actually finish and accomplish what you set out to do, you've made a huge exponential, increase in your life. It's sort of like on a chart. You know, the compounding is little by little by little.
Mhm.
Exponential starts here and then just shoots straight up.
Yeah.
If you quit now, you're gonna have to start all over again.
Mm.
When you could have been already soaring. It's sort of like a spaceship. Imagine if they're ready to launch, they start launching, it starts going up, and they're like, we change our mind. That thing's gonna come crashing down.
Yeah.
It's gonna burn, it's gonna crash. Right? But if you just see it through and get through the G-force and get through the shaking and get through the whatever it may be that may cause displeasure and uncomfort and get through that and discomfort and get through that discomfort, you're going to soar. You're going to soar.
Yeah.
You know, and that's going to stay in your mind. That's going to stay in your heart. And the next time you have a challenge or something, you're going to be like, listen, it's sort of like King David, you know, he killed the wolf and he killed the lion and he killed its old giant. I can
Mhm.
take you down too. God, let me kill the lion, the tiger, the bear. Oh my,
Yeah.
I can take you down. And he did,
Absolutely.
you know?
You know, it's the same thing as like we were talking yesterday with the bow and the arrow.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, God got the target that he wants to hit, and he's using us to hit these targets.
Yeah.
But we don't see that he's holding the bow. We're the arrow and he's holding the bow. So all we see is we see him pulling us back, and we see as the arrow, we see it going back. We don't know we're getting drawn back.
Right.
But eventually he's got to release.
Yes.
He's got to hit that target.
Yep.
And you feel it pulling back, why am I going backward? Why am I going? Well, you're getting set up for a launch.
Yes.
You're getting set up for a launch because God's got to hit a target.
Yes.
And you're the arrow.
Yes.
And when he releases, watch out.
Yeah. I mean, like, purpose is everything. I call it goals, you know, like having goals, having purpose. To me, that is everything. When you know that if I follow through with this, such and such is gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I knew, like, if I stayed, one thing I did, and we were talking about this earlier before we got on air here. I did devotionals every night with my children since they were born.
Yeah.
I went through a divorce. I was the single parent there for a while. Even as a single parent, even when I went through the divorce, even when we were going through COVID, we still had devotional every night.
Yeah. It's good.
You know, we still had devotional every night. We stayed consistent. And people would ask me, well, why did you do that? You know, why, especially with all the issues and problems of life and this and that, didn't you get discouraged and just want to quit? Sure, I wanted to quit. There were many times I thought I was losing faith. I wasn't growing in faith. I thought I was going backward in my faith. But I stayed consistent with that with my children.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if I stayed consistent to the end with living a life of faith before my children, with its ups and downs and everything, my children would have an example of a person who lives by faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
And that they would see how God intervened in my life so many times. And that by seeing my relationship with God, they would desire that relationship with God too.
Amen. And that's exactly why I thought you were like awesome to have this conversation with.
Yeah.
You know, look at what they've watched you endure.
Yeah.
And then still have your faith.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
that's amazing, bro.
Yeah. And I always remind my children that
Hey guys, here's a quick message from one of our affiliates. Do you ever feel there's seasons where you're stretched thin, carrying responsibility, leading conversations, trying to build well, but realize you can't keep pouring out without being intentional about getting refilled? I know a lot of you listening right now have felt that same way. I found that Wellspring Legacy Group isn't just about motivation. It's about alignment through their coaching, consulting, and retreats. They help you slow down, get clear, and make sure the foundation of what you're building is healthy, not just productive. That's why I trust Wellspring Legacy Group. It's not about fixing something broken. It's about staying rooted, restored, and aligned, so the work actually lasts. If this resonates with you, connect with Wellspring Legacy Group. And when you do, use code DailyChop to take that next step forward.
God carried me through.
Amen.
When I got weak, the Bible says when we are weak,
He is strong.
He is strong.
Amen.
You see, so like there were times in life, and if you're thinking of quitting something good in your life, whether it be a sport, a job, a marriage, you know what I mean, a church, whatever it may be in your life, and you're thinking of quitting, I would ask you just to consider the fact that if you don't quit, what will happen?
Mm. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you don't quit, what could happen that could change your
Change
life?
everything.
It can change everything. It can change destinies.
Yeah. And at our
You know?
age, bro, people don't see it at a younger age, right? Because it's hard to see. But now at our age, you know, you're probably about, I don't know, you're probably about 8 years my elder.
Yeah.
But I look back and see, oh, man,
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't think I could make it through that.
Yeah.
You know, and then we get to this age in life and we're like, man, look how much we've already come through.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started off. Like, man, what are we gonna do? We can't just give up.
No.
I think the only real time to finally, like, you could say, okay, like I'm done is when you're dead.
Yeah.
Because what else are you gonna do? You're still here. You still got to make it through whatever you're going through.
Yeah.
You know, you can't run from whatever it is.
It's like if you quit being responsible with basic things in life, like paying your bills, going to work, you know, doing those kinds of things, it starts having a domino effect.
It does.
And it starts affecting everything. Imagine if you flip that though. And you go in the opposite direction where you're faithful and consistent with your bills. You're faithful and consistent with giving to God. You're faithful and consistent with taking care of your family and with saving and investing. Eventually you buy your own house.
Yeah.
You don't have to rent anymore. Eventually you own, you know, your own vehicle. You're not making car payments. Eventually you may even start a car dealership and sell your own car, you know, sell cars.
You never know.
You know, it can reverse if you just don't give up.
Yes.
Hang in there, endure to the end. The Bible says to those who endure to the end, they overcome. They're the ones who move forward and progress. And don't be jealous of people who haven't quit and are at your age, and you do this comparison thing, you know, where you're like, oh, if I would have had their resources, if I would have had this. No. You're called to fulfill your purpose.
Your race. You know, there's
stay
two
focused
things.
in your lane, you know?
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm just a big guy. So.
That's all right. You know, the Bible says to run the race, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't say run Irvin's race. It doesn't say run Alex's, run Natalie's. It says run your race.
Yeah.
Right? Not social media race, your race. And so I think that one, people forget about that and we put ourselves in a box.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that got me through my hard times in the military was looking around. Literally, was looking around and seeing that everybody that's here with me right now is feeling the same dang way I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And as a civilian now, I'm separated from my battle buddies, right? But now I have new battle buddies, and I have to remember that even though that we're not on the one unit, that you're still going through something similar.
Yeah.
That there's somebody else still out here going. Out of 8 billion people in this world, somebody's experiencing the same feeling I'm feeling. I'm not the only one. I can't put myself in that box.
That's right.
And so many times as Americans, we put ourselves in a box as like, nobody knows what I'm feeling. Bull crap.
Yeah.
Bull crap. Somebody knows, man. There's 8 billion people. Are you telling me out of 8 billion people, nobody knows how you feel?
Yeah.
No way. No way.
Yeah. Don't, I'm going to do it. I'm gonna look at it this two ways. Don't become a victim to your own pouty
Yes.
story, feel sorry for myself kind of thing. And at the same time, you can replace all of that by recognizing other people are feeling what I'm feeling. So I'm not the only one going through this. And if they're getting through this, I can get through this.
Man,
Use it
let's
as
go.
a way to step up. Use it as a way
Yes.
to move forward, to encourage yourself. Be good to yourself.
Man.
You know, we were talking about priorities and stuff. You don't have to quit something, but sometimes you can take a break. You know, I know a lot of people that work really, really hard, and I always relate it to ministry because I always watch ministry. That's my focus is churches and ministry groups and missions groups and all that kind of stuff. So I see what they're doing and I see what leaders do a lot. And one of the things I've learned about good leaders and then leaders who just quite honestly just fade off and quit is that leaders who are good leaders, they know how to pace themselves.
Yeah.
They have their purpose before them, they pace it, and they give themselves time to rest. You need an R&R
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to drain yourself. You need an R&R. You need to relax, you know, for a little bit, but then you don't live there. You get back up and you start off
drive
where
on.
you left
Yeah.
off, and you keep moving. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I think sometimes it's easy to quit when you feel drained, when you feel tired, when you feel like you're the only one doing this. Yo, there's resources around you. They're called other human beings that are going through the same thing you're going through.
Absolutely.
And if you pull together, like you said, you can have a band of brothers and sisters that you have each other's back,
Yeah.
you know, and you can all progress forward together. Last
Absolutely.
night I was in a small group, and there's a gentleman in my small group that said something so powerful. He's into construction and renovation and all that. And I can relate to that. And he said, if you take 1 2x4 and hold it up under one wall to hold up a second story wall, he goes, that 2x4 is going to snap. He goes, but if you drill 10 of them together and put them smack dab in the middle, that whole second floor will stay standing.
Yeah.
Till you fix everything. He's like, the more of you together, the easier the project becomes, the easier it is to
Absolutely.
carry the weight.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're carrying a weight and you're struggling carrying a weight, don't carry it alone.
Yeah.
Ask for help.
Yeah.
There's people who
Absolutely.
will help you.
They will help you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive.
But
you know?
don't quit. Don't give up on yourself.
You know, Eric Thomas says something I love, man. And he's like, don't how you say, don't quit because it's hard, or
Yeah.
don't cry because it's hard. Cry because you don't want to give up.
Yeah.
Don't cry because it's hard. Cry because you don't want to give up.
Right.
And I'm like, dang, I like that.
Yes.
I like
Yeah.
that.
I used to when I was in high school, I swam the swim team, and there's we did a lot of laps and stuff. And sometimes I was so tired, especially my core would be just so burning tired. So you eat a lot of carbs before you go for competition the day
Get that
before. So like,
energy.
I love the carb night, but then competition, I was energized and ready to go. But during the week when you're training and you're doing laps and you're doing all this jogging, cardio, all this kind of stuff, your core is just really,
Tight.
it's tight. You look cool, but man, you feel sore and
Yeah.
tired. And one of the things that I learned so that I wouldn't, because there are times I was tempted to just quit. Why am I doing this? You know, I'm just going to quit.
Mhm.
I learned that while I was working out and stuff, if I had to cry through the workout, if I had to vent through the workout,
Yeah.
it was better to do that
Absolutely.
and get through it than to just quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
You know, that's so true.
There's a difference between failing and trying to do something well, and you fail. Well, at least you went and did something well. You tried it. There's another thing when you fail because you just didn't try at all.
You know, another thing Eric Thomas says is, and I love it. He says, he tells a story about somebody that wants to be successful. Have you ever heard that one?
No.
He says, if you want to be successful, meet me at the water.
Mm.
And so this guy shows up and he comes meeting a successful person. He's curious why he's wanting to meet him at the water. And so this young guy shows up in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
And the older guy tells him, go get in the water and dunk yourself under the water. Put yourself under the water. Goes and he says, stay there. And when you can't breathe, come up and breathe. So he does that. And he says, when you were underwater, how bad did you want to breathe?
Mm.
Kid says, I wanted to breathe bad. He says, well, if you want to be successful, when you want to be successful that bad as you wanted to breathe underwater, you will be.
Yeah.
But until then, you won't.
Yeah.
And it's all in the mind. The other thing I learned in the Army is that my body is not in control.
Right.
My body sends signals to my brain to tell my brain, hey, I'm tired and I hurt, quit.
Yeah.
But my brain is the one in control, right? Now, as a married person, you gotta watch out for that, right? Because now I can put a 13, 14-hour day in and my wife's like, get off the dang computer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but, no, they ain't no buts. Like, you gotta quit. So there's a fine line I gotta put in between that.
Yeah.
But if you can tell your body, when that signal from your body sending the pain back to your brain, if your brain can send it back to the body and say, hey, it's okay, I can go a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a signal. I can make it.
Yeah.
Because I'm in control of my body, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I may get tired,
Yeah.
And that's the same part that I take that back all the way to when Jesus told the disciples, can you not just stay up with me for 1 hour?
Yeah.
It's on the mind. Your body was tired.
Yeah.
But your body was in control, not their brain.
Yeah.
And the same thing for us. How many times, I don't know how many times I wake up in the morning and I want to fall back to sleep as I'm reading and I'm studying or I'm praying.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I have to tell my body like, hey, wake up.
And you're saying something important. You're doing self-talk.
Yeah.
You're talking to yourself. Yeah. And you're redirecting. How you speak to yourself.
I do it a lot.
It's going to affect whether you're going to quit or not.
Absolutely.
If you're constantly complaining, I think there's a difference between venting and then complaining.
I don't know. The Army, there's not.
Yeah, I know. But I'm trying to be nice here.
I'm like, you ever met an infantry soldier? Boy, you'll hear them complain the most. They'll get it done, but they're going to complain the whole time.
Right. So this is, I guess this is the point I'm trying to make, is that when the way you speak to yourself, you're creating an environment in your mind.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, what kind of environment do you want in your mind?
Mm-hmm.
And some people, let's be honest, some people are addicted to drama. Some people are addicted to everything being a big deal.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're going to get what you put in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's this phrase, when I was in living in Indiana, we used to have these gentlemen that would sell bean pies on the street. Okay. And they were part of a religious group, and they would sell bean pies, and they would always have this pamphlet and this newspaper. And on it, on the very front page of the newspaper and the pamphlet, it always says, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
You are what
So
you
true.
eat. You are what you consume. So what are you putting into your mind? Are you putting into your mind a quitter mentality? Are you building a quitter mentality? Or are you building a mentality of someone who gets the job done?
Yeah.
I always had this phrase too. My kids will tell you. They're so sick of me saying this phrase all the time. But I would always be like, don't worry about that. We'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And they would be like,
oh, bridge.
Yeah. And at that moment, they're like, oh, what are we going to do? No. Calm down.
Right.
When you're calm and you're collected, then you can think it through.
Yeah.
Then we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. So many people get stressed out and then begin to make worse decisions because their brain is not clear, and it's trying to function at 1,000,000 miles an hour, which they've never even. Some people can do it, right? Like some people know, okay, I need to control my adrenaline. I got to control this, and I can control my breathing and my brain and my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never been in an experience to do that, man, everything flies. Time goes by so fast.
Yeah.
You don't know what happened. You don't know what you're thinking, and you don't even know how you got where you're at.
Yeah. You also have to define for yourself what success is. I notice a lot of people who quit, they don't have a definition of what their success is.
Yeah. Wow.
What their accomplishment is. They, like we were talking about purpose and stuff. Okay. How do you know that you accomplished your purpose? How do you know that you were successful? Well, define that. Maybe sometimes sitting down and being like, listen, I don't like this job. Well, maybe it's not the job that's a problem. Maybe it's you don't like the income. So how could you better your income and not blame the job and not quit the job, but how could you find another way to make more income? You know, it's
I
the
think
way
it's
we
different. Yeah,
it's the way we're
yeah.
thinking about stuff, because it's very easy to quit, but to actually have a mindset that's like, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna quit, I'm gonna be resilient, I'm gonna endure. It takes some baby steps for some, you know.
So here's what you made
Yeah,
me think of when you said all that.
yeah,
I'm gonna use the example of the military.
mhm,
Okay. At one point in their life, every veteran had signed a blank check to
yes,
give their whole entire life for this country.
yes,
Now, people in the higher up, they probably look at it differently, right? Like, okay, well, your agenda's aligned with the government agenda. But
mhm,
really, if you ask any soldier, they did it for their country and purpose, right? And their purpose was to defend this country, even if it took their whole life.
mhm,
Now, what does the Bible say in that? The Bible says about discipleship, right?
yeah,
Leave everything, follow me.
yeah,
That's purpose.
yes,
A soldier has no care about the clothes. A soldier has no care about the stupid MRE.
yeah,
The soldier's purpose is to defend and die for the
for
country.
the country, yeah,
There's no purpose. People have no purpose. Most soldiers, yes, they need money to survive,
mm,
right? But they probably wouldn't care. They have so much fun as a 19-year-old. If I didn't have a family at the time of kids, I probably wouldn't have. I would care less about the amount of money I got paid for it. I loved what I did. I loved my friends. I loved my battle buddies. I loved my job. I had the best and the worst times of my life in the military,
yeah,
but I had purpose.
yeah,
People out here, they don't have purpose. So they have to put a price tag on it.
yeah.
They have to pay them so much, not purpose.
You know, there's a Charlie Kirk, when he was alive, said something that was very powerful. Someone had asked him, "I don't have a feeling or a sense of purpose in life. What should I do?" And I loved Charlie Kirk's answer.
Mhm.
He's like, "Do you want purpose?" And the guy was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You really want purpose and meaning to your life?" And he was like, "Yes." He goes, "Put God first.
Yeah.
Go find a wife, get married, have kids. I guarantee you, you'll be full of purpose."
If not purpose, you'll be full of finding out how selfish you are.
Yeah. Right. Like, so I think that's so true. I think that, like, I also think that when we're talking about people who quit, I also think quitters, they ruminate about what could be and what might be, instead
Dreaming
of,
too much.
yeah, instead of thinking about what is and what they are in control of, what they have a
Yeah.
power over.
Absolutely.
So they sit there and ruminate about, well, if I do this and so does that and the plant shuts down and then I won't have this and I want, dude, the plant just opened 2 weeks ago. Like, you're good. You know what I'm saying? They got a 30-year vision and enough funds for the next 15. Like,
Yeah.
you're
absolutely.
good, bro. Like, you're all right. We can ruminate so quickly and then quit. So that's another thing I would encourage people who are thinking of quitting is stop ruminating.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Work with the reality that you have, not what
yeah.
not what you're thinking toxically about and stuff. Work with the reality that is, because sometimes what is a lot better than what you're ruminating about.
And I think something that adds into that people forget about a lot is we can think about things we want to do and then we get so motivated
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, all right, I'm going to go do it.
Mhm.
Right. But they forgot to think about everything else.
Yeah,
I have to know what there's a cost for everything,
yeah,
right? There's a price I have to pay for everything.
yeah,
And what are that? Okay. The hardships, right? Let's think of things that have cost. Change is going to be the very first. They don't think of the changes that they're going to have to make. And that's the most first thing you should think of is a
Yes.
change.
Yeah.
Why? You should think of a change because that's the hardest thing for a person is change. It doesn't matter if it's a small change. You could start at a small change. Okay, I'm moving into a different house. Well, guess what? You're still going to feel uncomfortable for a bit because you're not settled. You're used to your old house.
Yeah.
The moving is going to make you uncomfortable for a little bit. I don't like this so much about that. I like the old house. It was this. I like the backyard because it was this. Well, it's change. It's going to make you uncomfortable. And the same thing when we make decisions. People think I get motivated to do this. I'm going to start it.
Mm-hmm.
Great, go start it. But think about what you're going to have to put into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not willing to give what it's going to have to be put in, and you're going to quit.
Yeah.
You have to be willing.
You have to follow through with it. There's a person that I spoke to this week about that, about change, and actually it was last week, and it was in a spiritual context. It was at church and stuff, and basically the Lord had shown me that there are people who begin ministries. They'll begin a kids program or a youth program, or they'll begin a small group, and they get about halfway through, and then they just stop it and they quit it, and then nothing comes of it.
Hmm.
And usually people get a little bitter, upset, and I invested into this. I was really into this.
Yeah.
I want, what happened? Why can't we do this? And and then it opens the panorama's box for Pandora's box for anything and
Yeah.
everything to come out. And I was thinking to myself, s- sometimes in our life we may have started something and not finished it. The best thing you can do is to go back and finish it. If you're
Yeah.
able to go back and finish what you started,
Absolutely.
if you want to not be a quitter and be known as not a quitter, go back and fix that thing.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier, but the reason I bring it up is because you're talking about change. You know, we want change in our lives, but we have to take the steps to make that happen. And
Yeah.
sometimes before we can go help someone else mow their lawn and take care of their yard and do the lawn care on their property, we got to do it on ours first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If I'm going to be talking to someone about not being a quitter, I myself can't be a quitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's going to take you serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm going to tell someone, hey, this is how you become a firefighter. I hope that the person that's giving me that advice is a firefighter.
Right. Right.
I don't want a doctor working on me who's a doctor just because somebody gave him a sticker from a Cracker Jack box and called him doctor. I want to know that he's a doctor.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same way with quitting. Like if you are a person that like, man, I've got to work on this. I don't want to be a quitter. Well, maybe there's some things that you can go finish that you started.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know,
That's
um,
so true.
so I know I sort of went full
No.
circle again with that, but
No.
it just comes up when you're talking about this.
Well, I like that because, so many people, especially young people, right? As a young person,
Mhm.
when I was young, it was hard for me to figure out what I wanted to do. Um, and I think that was just a lack of direction.
Mm.
I think direction in kids' lives matters so much, man. Um, even if you're a single mom, I think it's very important for you to find ways of uncles,
Yes.
of even men at church. Get your
Yes.
young kids in a discipleship, some type of discipleship with with responsible, mature men.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That can
Yeah.
teach them how to be a man.
Yes.
Because, and it's no offense, but as a woman, you can't teach a man how to be a husband.
Mm-hmm.
As a man, I can't teach my daughters how to be a wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as a single mom, it's important that you find someone that can mentor your young boys growing up. They need direction.
Yes.
They're not going to know how to be a man. They're going to be confused. That was one thing. And I'm not talking sexually confused. I'm talking confused on what you want to do in life. What is your
Mhm.
job? Where is your purpose?
Or just those feelings that, I'm sorry, that whether people agree with this or not, men and boys, especially boys, as they're developing into men, they have certain feelings and certain desires. And I'm not just talking physical. I'm talking about if there are no boundaries for boys,
Yeah.
they'll jump off that bridge
Oh, absolutely.
because the boys, we want to fly.
But-
You want to do so many different things, and that old adage, that boys will get themselves into trouble and this and that. We will if there's no restraint. We definitely
That's
will.
exactly what I meant by thank God we have
Yeah.
law enforcement, because there's no discipline
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Could you consider, literally think of there being no law enforcement and no laws?
Yeah.
This place would be a wreck. And that's the same thing with boundaries with boys.
And that's why you do need male role models for boys. And I
Yes.
would go as far as to say that those male role models need to be alpha. in their lives. You know, they need to be a bit tough,
Yeah,
on,
because
them
life,
boys, like,
who in a home, who leads the house?
yeah,
The man.
yeah,
Who's going to have to carry the majority of that pressure? The male.
yeah,
Like, the man has got to be strong,
yeah.
bro. I live with 3 daughters and a wife, bro. Exactly. You don't even got to say nothing. You could just
Right.
laugh and be like, "Dang, dog!"
I'm
Like,
praying for you.
exactly. You got to be tough. You got to be tough to lead this house, bro.
Yeah.
You got to. I'm not. I know it's no offense. I love my wife, but man, these girls.
But
man.
your wife has a benefit that she can lay down the law in the house.
Oh, she does.
And I'm sure the girls are like listening to her, and I'm sure they're always obedient, and they never talk back under their breath. But then when mom finds out and mom's like, okay, they didn't listen to me, mom doesn't have to flex her muscles. She gets to have dad do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And immediately it gets corrected.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by like the alpha male. I don't mean like an alpha male, like somebody who comes in and just beats up people and is abusive and loud and all that. I'm talking about a man who knows
You got some good morals.
He has his role, and part of that role is to keep order.
Yeah.
To keep some sense of order, especially because I look at it as the scriptures look at it. A woman rules within her home. She's up early in the morning, like the Bible says, and she's out there getting resources and lighting up the house and getting everybody started and on their way. And she has a system for her home.
Yeah.
But a man, he provides. He's a priest, but he's also a protector, and he represents the law in the home.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times. There are a lot of men in society. In our society, this has happened quite a bit, where men want those responsibilities without the other responsibilities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want to be the lawgiver, but they don't want to be in the word themselves. They don't want to be, prayed up as well. They don't want to be at the devotional. They don't want to be a provider.
Yeah.
They want to be lazy and idle and stuff like that. No, it all comes together. You can't just be the one and take on the one hat and then think that that's going to take care of everything. It's not.
Right.
But we do need, and I've said this before many times, you've heard me say this many times, but the society, the church, America, the world is going to be a better place, I truly believe, when men take their place.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
take it fully, completely, not take over, but take their responsibilities seriously.
Yeah.
And
let me, I want to elaborate a little bit what I think is a man, right?
Sure.
I think at 19, you're still a kid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, young guys, young adults. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
I'm 20 years older than you. I still think you're a kid. I think you can be 19 and be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very possible because I training up soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
I see 18-year-olds that are men.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do they still play hard? Absolutely.
Sure.
Right. But I think a man carries honor. He carries loyalty. He carries duty.
Yes.
He carries good morals.
Yes.
In general, selfless service. You know what I'm saying? I think all them things is helps create a man.
Yes.
Now, can you have them and still be a jerk? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think just because I don't think because you know them things, if you're still a jerk, I don't really consider you a man. Right. I when I think of a man, I think of a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like the word gentleman. We don't use it a lot in society anymore. When I think of a gentleman, I think of I was coming out of the coffee shop one day and there was an older couple, they were in there for their,
Mm-hmm.
for their just, they go and meet with older couples, have a cup of coffee.
Sure.
And this guy, he gets his wife, he cords her out and he walks her right to her car door and opens the door. And I'm like, oh man, what a gentleman. I don't see that very often.
Mm-hmm. I think character needs to be reflected through your personality.
Yes.
And I think when you're a good man and you're a man of character, it will be reflected in who you are.
Yeah.
Your personality.
Absolutely.
I think when we're gruff and we're rough, in a rude, disrespectful way, I think that is reflective of your character. And it doesn't mean that you can't change. You can change your character. You can change those morals and those ethics and those values. Those definitely can change.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be willing to quit.
Yeah.
Being a jerk.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
One thing I was guilty of when I first came out was I was kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
I was kind of arrogant, you know,
Sure.
and excuse me, but I think that's something we got to watch out for as men,
Yeah.
because that can lead us down a wrong path
Yeah.
very fast.
Yeah.
Um,
Humility is also a characteristic of true manhood.
absolutely.
We know when to be humble, and we know when it's necessary to have some pride and confidence.
Yeah.
And healthy confidence.
And you also know when you got to be a wolf. Sometimes you
Yep.
got to be a wolf, bro.
Yep.
I'm sorry. You may
Yeah.
not like to hear it, but
Yep.
sometimes you got to be a wolf.
Yep.
I'm not going to just let anybody come into my house.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you think that somebody's going to just kick in my door, guess what? I have an armory, buddy,
Yeah.
and I'm not afraid to use it.
That's
Like,
right.
I'm going to be a wolf if I have to be, because I'm not going to let you just come in and take my kids and take my wife and my house.
The habit of shaking hands, you know where that comes from, right? It was especially amongst Native Americans in the Wild West and cowboys.
Okay.
And it was due to the fact that there was so much violence going on during those times that everyone always had a gun in their hand, a gun or a rifle or a knife, a weapon. When you shook hands with someone in those days, it meant that you were taking away from each other. You both were releasing a weapon
I like
in
that.
order to have peace, in order to let the other know, I have not come to you in a way that will be offensive. I've not
Yeah.
come so that your wolf will have to show.
Yeah.
I come in a peaceful manner, so we can discuss things as equal partners in friendship.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and so in this day and age, people may shake hands with each other. That's a common practice, but
Is
in
it
their hearts,
honorable?
yeah. But in their hearts, are they doing it out of honor, or is it being done? Or do they have some other weapon? Because like I always say that the Satan himself, the enemy, came against Adam and Eve as a snake. A snake doesn't have ears; it doesn't want to listen.
Yeah.
But it has a mouth, a long tongue.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes the weapons today are more spiritual, and like we were talking earlier, the distractions, their dialogues, their deceptions, and things like that. And I say all of that to get back to the point of like when we're in the home and we're being responsible men within our homes, within our families, with our spouses and our children and stuff. There's a time where we have to be a wolf, and we have to recognize when someone's being a snake. You know what I mean? Or things like that. And what does this have to do with quitting? Well, if you're a husband and you quit your responsibilities, you leave your family open to the attack of the enemy spiritually, as well as possibly the attack of society against your family, the bad elements of society. So quitting will damage. Quitting being a dad will damage your children.
Man.
Quitting being a good husband, it will damage a woman's heart.
Yeah. Especially for kids. What are you teaching?
Yeah.
What are you teaching your kids? What are they going to go and repeat?
Yeah.
How to be a quitter.
Yeah.
Like that's something we got to get. That was my whole point of this conversation, man, is that we have a lot of people, like, especially young kids, man. They don't, it's wanting to not do what they got to do.
I walked through Walmart one time with my son, and there's this boy. My son worked at Walmart in high school. So I was going to pick up my son, and there's this boy walking, and I go through this aisle to get something. And there's this little boy, about 8 or 9 years old, and he's taking a baseball and he's throwing it at stuff on the shelf and knocking it down and running through the shelves and knocking everything down and laughing and just being loud. And I heard this noise. And my son knows, like, my son looked at me, he's like, Dad, please don't. You're not everybody's dad. And I'm like, apparently he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
So I went to the aisle and I raised my voice, and I'm like, hey, kid, what do you think you're doing? And he's like, I'll do whatever. I said, you're going to shut your mouth right now. You get over here and pick this stuff up and start cleaning up your mess. And he just got real quiet and was like, yes, sir. And then when he was done, I pulled him to the side and I sort of pulled his ear, like I didn't physically pull his ear, but I was talking to him, and I was just like, how dare you? How dare you come into somebody else's place? I said, how would you like if I went into your room and started tearing your stuff up?
Yeah.
Started throwing things around that you like.
Absolutely.
He goes, my mom wouldn't let you in the house. I go, exactly. I said, so why do you think you can come into someone else's house and do that?
Yeah.
And then I calmed down and I started talking to him a little bit more. And I'm like, who's your mom? This and that. And he pointed to his mom. And I saw that she had seen that I had done that. And then I actually hugged him and I prayed for him. I said, listen, come here. And I hugged him. I go, you just need a good man around you every once in a while to remind you that someday you're going to be a man.
Yeah.
And you're not going to want people doing this in your home. So don't do this in someone else's.
Absolutely.
And he was like, yes, sir. I appreciate that. You know, my son was looking at me like, I thought you was going to whoop him, Dad. I thought you was going to spank his behind real good. You know, he goes, I wanted to whoop him, you know.
Yeah.
And his mother came up to me afterwards and thanked me.
That's
She
awesome.
said, you know, I'm a single mom. I've got so many boys. I think she had like 4 boys. And I was just like, wow. Like,
You know that-
and she's like, he needed to hear that. She goes, he's the one that's really wild and disrespectful and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah.
You know what that reminds me of, though? That reminds me of when we were younger.
Yeah.
It took a community to raise a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, how many times were the neighbors like yelling at us?
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
go get your parents. You're going to go get your
Yes.
parents.
Yeah.
You know, my uncle got a hold of me. Jay got a hold of me a few times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm
Can
sure you
imagine.
probably remember a couple of times. You probably seen a couple of times
Yeah.
you got a hold of me.
Yeah. He's a
but-
good dad.
Yeah, dude,
He's
he
an
is.
excellent father. Like,
He is,
Yeah.
man. And so, but we have to, as busy as we are, man, to create people that are kids that are going to eventually be adults in our society, to create people that are not going to quit.
yeah.
We have to get back to what we used to do, man. We had the saying, we still have the saying that's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So why have we tried to fix our community?
I think too, the other thing, Alex, is like we had common social mores. Like
Yeah.
we had common social values.
Yeah.
I don't believe that social values are the same anymore.
Absolutely.
When we have parents, I read an article of a young man who stabbed another boy at a track meet and killed that boy. And then the mother and her the family of the boy who was the attacker started attacking the family whose child was murdered.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, it's sort of like the parents who go to the school and the principal saying, your child did this and that, and so they're suspended. And then that parent gets mad at the school
Yeah.
for suspending, a child who's being disruptive
Mhm.
in the school. We have to. That's why I truly believe that the Word of God, the Holy Bible, is the Word of God. It's our authority for our lives, and the Scriptures teach us that that we have to have, especially as believers, we have to be of one mind,
Yeah.
and of one accord, one heart. And our heart should be for the blessing and the benefit of our children, that they would be that they would not be quitters, but that they would be overcomers, that they would know what success is in their lives. And in order for that to happen, we have to teach our children self-discipline, self-control, and we also have to teach it to other parents,
Yeah.
because some parents don't know how to parent. They just don't. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're bad parents or that they don't have a good heart and they don't desire that, but
75% of learned behavior.
yes, comes from the home. It comes from home.
Yeah.
So we're talking about quitting. That's why I say to parents, don't quit. Don't quit on
Don't
your
quit,
kids.
man.
And don't quit on yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to parent, there are parenting classes. There are parenting groups. Go pull a mother. I call them mothers, a senior sister in Christ at church. Pull her to the side. Find a mother that has raised kids
I have
and get
an
some
acronym.
advice,
Absolutely. I have an acronym that I like to say. And Bible.
Yeah.
Bible's the acronym.
Yeah.
Basic instruction before leaving Earth.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Revert back to it.
Yes.
Revert back to the
Yes.
basic instruction before leaving Earth, the Bible. Hit it.
Yeah.
Because you're so right on that, bro.
Yeah.
People forget that they can reach out. And I think that's shame. I think shame covers them from being like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to reach out to so-and-so. Bro, you remember what it was like in the 90s, dog?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. You remember what it was like in 92. Dog, everybody reached out to. We knew our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
People don't even know their neighbors these days.
I had quit when I was younger. I had quit so many jobs that there was a gentleman that I loved, and I thought he was a really good friend, and he still is. But he made a comment about me to someone one time, and he said, "This guy changes jobs like he does socks," and it hurt, and I felt ashamed by it, and that I just didn't avoid him. I avoided almost everyone I knew.
Oh, wow.
Because for like a year or so, I'm like, man, I must be a horrible Christian here. Like, I don't have this down. Like, this is the one area, certain people struggle with certain things. I struggled with a lot of things, I'll be very honest.
Yeah, same.
But sort of getting stable and consistent with my life, with raising children, marriage, all that was all new for me. I was glib to all of this kind of stuff. And so when someone said that, that shame came on me.
Yeah.
I felt that shame, and it kept me from reaching out to people and asking for help.
Yeah.
And there's anyone listening to this podcast right now, I know, there are people who are listening, and I want you to know, ask for help.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Ask for help. You'd be amazed how many people do want to help. You'll be amazed at how many people, and take the advice and walk it out. Don't just like listen and then not do anything with it.
Yeah.
Do something with it, put action behind that.
God can open doors, but you got to walk through them.
Yeah.
God can open doors, but you got to walk through them. If you're not willing to walk through that door, it's not going to help you any.
It's not going to help.
You know what I'm saying? That's so true, bro. Irvin, man. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
We just had an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure we stepped on some toes. That's okay.
I'm sure people probably might think I'm a misogynist, and all this kind of stuff. Those labels get thrown out quite a bit nowadays, but I really am not. I'm not. I just believe in God's order, and I believe God's order is the best way.
Absolutely. But that last part kind of takes me back, it takes me back a little bit. Like, I don't care, man. Have your opinion. It's not mine.
Yeah.
I'm here. I believe in what God is doing. I believe in what he's done in me. You don't have to see eye to eye with me, but I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You're very welcome to not agree with me. And that's okay. I'm not going to be offended by that.
They're still welcome to the table.
You know what? Even if you don't agree with me, tap in, hit the platform.
Yeah.
I'd love to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with me, let's sit down and let's talk about it. I don't got to argue with you, bro. I don't care to argue with nobody. I don't want to argue. Matter of fact, my kids and my wife probably get annoyed with me because I don't. I'm going to sit there and be quiet. Yeah. And when we're calmed down, we can talk again.
Here's a little nugget of truth before we go.
Yeah.
I also believe that it's the responsibility of a husband and a father to bring peace and calm
to
the home. And so we set that by example. That's another reason why we shouldn't quit.
Yes.
Stay consistent.
Here's another one, another little golden nugget for that is not everything deserves a reaction.
Exactly.
Not everything deserves your energy. You know what I'm saying? You got to hold that energy for yourselves. Yeah. Sometimes we need that because our kids deserve that energy. Our wife deserves that energy. Our husband deserves that energy. Or friends that give good constructive criticism deserve that energy. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, if you guys like the new background, I have a good friend, Irvin Lopez. Thank you. Thank you for the constructive criticism. See, I'm able to take it. I took it and I did what he asked. I did what he said. And I think it looks good.
I do too.
So thank you, Irvin. I love the constructive criticism. Now, if it's an opinion, it's not for me. It's not my purpose.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Guys, if you have heard anything on this episode that just hits your heart or you agree with, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Our Apple and our Spotify users, man, go leave us a review. That helps us. It helps to spread the word. All these gold nuggets that Irvin gave us today, it helps people reach them. I think this was a great episode to talk about. I think there's so many people wanting just to quit and give up. So guys, stick with it. Don't quit. Hang on. As if you're young, the older you get, it's going to get easier, man. Starting a young life, everybody, I had it. Irvin's had it. Natalie's had it. It's tough, bro. You're not the only one in a tough spot. It sucks, but embrace the suck. It's going to be over soon. Before you know it, you're going to be my age. You're going to be getting ready to hit 40 years old.
Yeah.
Like, dang, I wish I was 20 again, dog. But I like it. I think the Bible tells me, my gray is wisdom, man. And I'll take it. I'll take it. I got a lot of wisdom from it. So I love my life. I love the rock that God has put me on. Right. I'm so thankful for every day that I'm here, man. And Irvin, I'm thankful for your conversation today, man.
I appreciate it. Same here. I learn a lot every time we're talking.
I do too, man.
I learn quite a bit. So,
well, thank you. And thank you guys, man. We love you guys. We couldn't do this without you. So God bless and talk to you soon.
It's a house divided, and I ain't talking about the rivalry. The numbers growing, people embracing reformed theology. It's not a trend, just a product of consequence. Told to shepherd people, lead them to scripture.